Good morning, Bitcoin, and welcome to Proof of Work. Proof of Work is a show about the people behind Bitcoin and how they got here. Today we're joined by Francis Pouliot. How's it going, Francis?
Very good. Thanks, Thomas.
Welcome to the show. How are you doing in Amsterdam? Have you been here long?
I've been here for a few days, and I really love Amsterdam. I was here for a conference a month ago. I've been there many times, and it's a great Bitcoin city.
It's the best. I'm already bike shopping, but I don't have a place to store the bikes. So there's a complex process of immigration and housing and employment and all these things. But then someday, I'll have a place to put the bike, and then I can stay.
Very good.
But yeah, working on it step by step. First, get the bike. But we're going to start off today with everyone's favorite and most familiar question. What was your first computer?
So I got my first computer when I was 7. It was a Windows computer. I don't remember the make of it. And
Is that like a clone, like a pizza box or a tower? Or?
It was a tower,
Yeah.
and it was probably an old Dell. Yeah, I was playing with floppy disks. I was an early gamer.
Yeah. What'd you play?
So my first big game was StarCraft was the one that really got me into gaming a lot.
Love StarCraft.
Yeah,
Great
yeah,
game.
StarCraft was great. I was a big fan of Red Alert.
Oh yeah, Command and Conquer. Yeah, I played
Command
all
and
those
Conquer,
for sure.
totally. Before that, I still remember playing Doom on floppy disks.
Yeah, Doom was a classic.
Yeah,
Of course, I
yeah.
played Wolf 3D before that,
Oh,
so I'm very old.
very good.
But and then I played. No one remembers this, but there's a game called Dune, D-U-N-E, Dune 2.
Really?
It was actually made by Blizzard before Warcraft, the original, all that.
Okay, I gotta
And
try
it's,
this.
It's like the beginning of StarCraft. And you
Yeah.
have all the concepts of like Command and
Nice.
Conquer are there, like gathering the Tiberium is like gathering the spice,
Yeah.
the melange,
Yeah.
and the little fighters, and they have airplanes. All the balance
Oh,
is
that's
all
great.
there.
Yeah.
And it's a classic. It's probably on the Internet Archive. You can probably play
Nice,
it for free.
nice. Yeah.
So-
So yes, I was just I was gaming, and then when I was a teenager, when torrenting came out.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like I was like
The
15.
dream, the magic.
Yeah. So I was really into the forums where they would post the magnet links, like Lou links, all that kind of stuff. And then I was already before Facebook. I was in high school. We were setting up like message boards.
Yeah.
So the whole online. I grew up with online trolling, and I don't know if people remember YTMND.
You're the man now, dog.
You're the man now,
Yeah,
dog.
yeah.
So I was into the early GIF making community, like
It's funny
GIFs
how
with
that
sound.
started so early,
Yeah.
kind of went away, and then now
Yeah.
I can't get enough Twitter GIFs. And,
Totally.
like, I use it all the time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
originally everyone was like, they kind of hated GIFs. They were like very annoying,
Yeah.
very loopy.
Yeah.
Like the "You're the man now" dog is of course a quote from Finding Forrester with Sean Connery, and he just kind of repeats it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And most of them were remixes of the same
Yeah.
words over and
Yeah,
over again.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
kind of it was itself kind of a troll.
And it was totally viral because YTMND was like the memes were evolving all the time and people would iterate. And I love how you pronounce it correctly. It is GIF, not
Indeed.
not GIF.
Not GIF. Just because the
GIF
creator
sounds
wants
weird.
to call it GIF, he should have.
Yeah.
And yeah, JPEG is cool, but it has a J in it.
Yeah,
If it was, it was GoodPeg, I'd call it GoodPeg. So, no, totally not on that. But we're going to keep fighting that. till the end, 'cause
Yeah, totally.
The creators put us in that position. So hopefully Satoshi doesn't come back and say, oh, it's actually pronounced Beachcoin.
Oh.
You're just saying it wrong. So. Well, that's cool. So you started out with games, and you
Yep.
got into GIFs.
Yeah.
You're big into the online culture. One of those
Yep.
spoiled kids. Your computer came with
Yes.
the internet.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
what's that like? No dial-up? Or
Oh
was
no,
it
I had dial-up, so
Or at
I
least
still
you're in
still
there.
remember like, Mom, get off the phone.
That's
or like,
right.
Can I?
That's my life.
Yeah.
The dream of a second line.
Yeah,
If I had a
exactly.
second line, I would be online all the time.
Yeah, totally.
But who can afford that as
Yeah,
a kid?
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You can't
yeah,
afford that.
yeah.
So that's excellent. So you're out in the world now. Did you stick with computers all the time? Did you study computers in college, or did you kind of go away from it?
No, actually, that's a good question. I stopped using. I literally stopped using the computer like as soon as I probably went to university or when I was like 18. I got into humanities, so I could have. I was a nerd, and I could have stayed a nerd, and I should have stayed a nerd probably.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I was definitely like the kind of person that should have went into programming, but I didn't. I went into economics and like philosophy, and I got like a 9 to 5 career as a like I would say, humanities bookworm.
Yeah,
And
nice.
then
I'd like to be paid to read.
yeah, well, I was paid to read. I was paid to write in economics. That was cool, but it was super boring. Like 9 to 5 jobs.
Yeah.
I realized I was like essentially slavery. And then when I got into Bitcoin, it was 100% for the libertarianism, right?
Mhm.
It was. I had no conception of the technology whatsoever, and then I became kind of the guy that would explain Bitcoin
Yeah.
at the meetup, on TV, like
Nice,
you know
nice.
that kind of stuff. Like I became like the go-to person for conferences and stuff. So I had to explain Bitcoin to other people, and then I remember, for example,
People think that's easy, but it's a skill,
yo,
isn't
it's
it?
it's
I mean,
super
it's
hard.
a very complex thing. You're
Yeah.
breaking it down into parts. I mean,
Yeah.
I come up with these metaphors and stuff,
Yeah.
and sometimes they're clever and sometimes they're not, but you just keep trying to bridge the gap to explain to
Yeah.
people what the thing actually is.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And like one of the things that I hated, it was not being able to answer a question, right? So I had this one time, someone was saying, "What about 51% attack?" And I'm just kind of spewing the same answers, like, "Oh, it's super unlikely, it's super
Yeah,
hard."
yeah.
But someone's like, "But explain to me, what makes it unlikely and hard,
Mhm.
specifically? Like, explain to me the process." I was like,
Sure.
okay, and then I was like, I didn't really understand. I didn't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and then I was like, okay, so
It's always good to compliment the questioner. Say,
Yeah.
"Hey, solid question.
solid question.
Give you some time to think."
Crap. Yeah. And then I needed to learn the technology in order to be able to explain it. So I started to Google, like, I started with the basics again. Like, I didn't know, I had not a lot of ideas what a web server was.
Sure.
Right. What's a cryptographic hash function? Like, I know math, but I don't know this math at all.
Yeah, you've never seen it applied in that way. I mean,
Yeah.
concepts.
Yeah,
but yeah.
and just the concept of a protocol being a set of rules which allows computers to communicate and synchronize. Like,
Yeah.
I obviously I didn't know what HTTP was, right? I was like, HTTP is that header in front of the websites. Like,
Sure,
what is
sure.
that?
The annoying thing that you have to
Yeah.
type that they put in all the commercials that
Yeah.
they should have phased out years ago.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
No one putting FTP
Yeah,
in
yeah.
front of their thing anymore.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was the original idea. Is
Yeah.
Oh, I want to go to this thing. I want to go to that thing, but it just became HTTP.
Yeah.
www also very redundant.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
So it was like 5, 6 years after university when I got into Bitcoin. A few years in Bitcoin, I was like, okay, I really need to get more into the tech. And then eventually I realized, well, okay, it's not that hard to understand the tech, right? It's building blocks, and as you accumulate your knowledge, the learning curve accelerates. Decelerates. I mean, it's easier to learn over time.
Yeah.
And now, and I started to look at the code a few years in, right? So now, the first time I started to look at code was when I was building my first Bitcoin app, and I hired a developer, and he was not a Bitcoiner, and I was a Bitcoiner. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, so we need to create payment requests. So I was like, okay, what the fuck do we do? Well, we have to generate addresses. And he's like, well, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, okay, well, let's learn together. So, looking at the API documentation, the specs, it's like, all right, so this is how we do that. This is how we do this. And me and my developer started to build apps together. And I would do the Bitcoin research as what is it that we want the software to do, and he would implement it. So you just had to force yourself to look at the code. And as I started to look at the Bitcoin code, eventually I realized, oh, well, I can see, I could not code myself, but when I read it, I'm like, oh, I see what's going on there. There's like 7 different steps, and I can see them in order, what's happening inside the wallet, and I just became so fascinated with the Bitcoin code. So I don't know how to program, I don't know anything about coding, but if I look at Bitcoin code, I'll be able to tell what is this software like doing, generally speaking, and that's just phenomenal. And the latest thing I've been trying to do is learn the command line, because after playing around with a lot of software, there's always this barrier. Like, I want to know what this software is doing, and all I can do is look at the docs. However, I could also just use it in the command line and see for myself what the output is going to be. And I felt like handicapped, right? Because I felt like I could not talk to my computer correctly. We were having a language issue. So learning the command line and being able to tell the computer specifically, I don't want to push a button, I want to tell the computer explicitly what I want to happen.
Right.
So learning the command line was like a super powerful experience, and now I just recommend it to everyone. So it was full circle.
It feels like you went about this all backwards, because I mean, I learned the command line first because I had no choice. I had DOS.
Yeah.
Windows was very clunky at the time, and if you wanted to run games, you had to run them direct from DOS. So I learned about DOS and like editing the files that load when the computer runs, the auto exec back, and the config sys, different memory configurations, little bit of basic programming just because it's what they were teaching at the time. So I had all that like under my belt, but for you to go the opposite way, to learn like the programming kind of from reading the code, then to try to learn the command line, you're making it tough on yourself. But I do think you have a really good point about that code is readable. Everyone's like, oh, it's ones and zeros, and these computer geeks know how to read it, but we're really just talking jargon, another level of words to confuse you. And if you start at the beginning and you read the code, it is kind of like a book. It jumps around a lot. It's like a choose your own adventure. You have like this function. If you don't know what that function is, you have to go look it up in the function list, and you have to read what the function does. And that could take half a day. I mean, if you really want to understand this stuff and you maybe aren't great at it, you're going to move through it slowly. But if you move through all those steps and you have like a very kind of an open generalist mind, you can picture this machine of what the code is doing. And at the end of the day, I mean, you don't have to write the Bitcoin, but I do think it's a good point that it's easier to read it than it is to come up with and think about it. And then if you can read it, you can run a basic command, like you're saying, generate an address. That's probably a function or a command. It's very simple. Send a Bitcoin from here to here. Another kind of function, again, similar to command line, where you have arguments for the function. Where is the Bitcoin going to go? How much Bitcoin are we going to send? Maybe even when are we going to send it? It could be time delayed. These are just flags on the function. So if you can run a program from command line, which isn't done anymore, but if you can go back and learn how to do that, you're on your way. So it's funny how I think the older systems, when we were closer to the computers, prepared us better maybe than these windows of disguising.
Everything is like pre-digested, and you don't really see what's going on under. And it's such a shame because knowing how to interact with a computer at a more personal, like deeper level, it's almost like a superhuman power in a way, right? Like you can do things that other people can't.
Well, scripting and macros and anything that you can. The whole beauty of the computer is it does a repetitive task. And you're like, do this one thing 100 times, do it 1,000 times. And once you, as the user, figure out how to tell the computer to do that, even if it's like a stupid thing like copying files or compressing things or whatever, you told it to do that. It's going through all the directories in the world, compressing them, or something like wget is fun. You can like get a website, and you can get the little directory tree. You can see all the things that people have set up for the website, and you can just download it because it's all public, and then it's on your computer. And you could look at their, HTML code. I mean, that's kind of the code I started with, more of a display language. But still, it's all there. It's all just telling the computer what to do. And if you take enough time and start at the beginning and read it really slowly, kind of like reading a foreign language. Like if you don't know the word, you like So
it's funny how like you get to learn these things. Like you're talking about like for example like the file system. Like I thought the file system was basically just like a way to organize your photos on your computer. I didn't know that it was linked to programming. And the first time I downloaded a website and I ran it in my browser offline, I was mind blown because I had no conception that the browser was anything else than a portal to some server. So it was I don't know if you remember bitaddress.org. Right, the JavaScript address generator where you would move your mouse around, and that's where I learned about entropy. Also, I learned what fuck am I moving my mouse around?
I know. Why are you doing that? It turns out it has a purpose.
It
you're
does.
creating a random number for the computer then to make the wallet and do all this complex stuff, but wiggling the mouse, which seems stupid.
But
works,
it teaches you so user generated entropy, client side, these are words that start to have meaning. And then I download this website and I kill it, I kill the internet, and I can still use it offline. And I'm like, whoa! So it's all in the browser. It's all on my computer, and I download it and I'm running it. So learning about client-side software versus server-side software and the concept of Bitcoin. So I just learned so much through using those tools and just trying to figure out what's going on under the hood. And I think if you're genuinely curious, there's Naval had this great quote the other day. He had a tweet from me. He was talking about specific knowledge and stuff like that. And this kind of knowledge is super hard to be taught. But it's so easy because if you really enjoy your curiosity, you learn, and it doesn't. It's kind of say, but it doesn't feel like learning at all. And I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I know a lot of stuff about computers now.
Yeah, yeah.
I know so much stuff. I can legitimately stand in a technical conference and have very, very deep arguments about technology with someone, and I was studying philosophy in college. It's crazy.
Well, and I think it's an important question here of who helped you? Who allowed you to do this? Did you have a straight up a mentor, or was it more like YouTube and help files?
I was lucky enough to have a mentor. So I'm a big believer in the concept of like apprenticeship, right? So I got introduced, I was very lucky. I got introduced to Bitcoin by guys that were technical, that were programmers. And we were friends, and they got me into Bitcoin because I was the talker, right? And they didn't want to talk.
That's the thing, everyone has talents.
Yeah.
Computer programmers have their own talents.
Yeah.
People that can talk have their own talents. I can make some videos. Like, we'll all work together and we'll get the job done.
Yeah, absolutely.
But everyone has to do what they're best at.
Exactly.
And it's difficult. You have to kind of stay in your lane sometimes.
No, totally. I mean,
your computer programmers doing your talking.
Separation of labor, right? The division of labor.
Yeah,
it's like
break this up.
And sometimes I even see like some programmers are like, oh, maybe I should do more talks. Well, you know what? I mean, like
do a lot of practice.
You can do talks and I can do talks, but I can't program and you can program. So
exactly.
you know, so
let's switch this off
yeah,
here.
yeah. And I would love to give up all that I'm doing now just to learn programming. That would be the most selfish thing to do. But then I'm like, am I really gonna bring value if I do that? Like, not that much. So these guys, they were like early kind of maximalists, like purists, you know, like cypherpunk guys. They like no bullshit type of people. And as soon as they hired me to become the PR guy for the Bitcoin Embassy, and when they hired me, they really put me through the test. They were like, okay, you need to mine Bitcoin yourself.
Yeah.
So they forced me. They're like, you need to be able to set up a miner. And I'm like, I have no idea.
Now you're really going to the command line, right?
Yeah, and I have to.
Linux, right?
And even like playing with my router to open a port, I'm like, what's a port? Oh, okay, so there's a thing called a port, and then I have to open it and all that kind of stuff. So they made me mine. They made me like do a few trades on local Bitcoins. So I was very lucky because I would spend hours and hours and hours with them. Just they were explaining me. Like the first time they explained to me the blockchain, I still remember that was so funny. I was hanging out with them, and they were looking at this block explorer, and it was one of the earlier ones that would make a sound every time there was I think it was bit listen.
Beep. Bit listen. That played music.
Yeah, it played music.
It was
so
like a music box, depending on the size of the transaction.
It would have a higher note or lower note, like bing, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, big ones would be for 30 Bitcoin.
And then when there's a block added, there's like a sound like ha. And then whenever there was a block, my friends were like super excited, and they're like, yo, there's a block, and I'm like, this is so weird. Like, what the fuck are these nerds doing? It's like when there is a block, they're excited, and I'm like, what's a block? Like, what are you guys talking about? And they're like, yeah, like so whenever there's enough transactions, like the block gets added to the blockchain. I'm like, what's a blockchain? Like, this is so weird. Like, and then you know, if you like to think of yourself as a smart person, right? So like, I'm always
You're supposed to know everything.
Yeah.
That's a big blocker too.
Yeah.
Like, at a certain point, I didn't know anything about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But I couldn't type into Google, like, what is Bitcoin? How do I buy
And it's so
Bitcoin?
frustrating.
Because
like,
I should know, but I didn't know, but I couldn't ask yet. So you have to know how to ask. And to know that you don't know everything.
And you know, when you see like a group of people that are talking with each other in a foreign language, like almost, they're like talking about these things, and I just kind of felt left out. I'm like, I really want to get this stuff because these guys are clearly smart, and they're clearly excited. And I don't understand, and that sucks. Like, I want to be part of this joke, you know. I want to be in on it. So that's kind of like what get me like just to dig in as deep as I could.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what did you do after you did PR for the embassy?
So that lasted almost like 2 years. So in the beginning, we didn't really know. So in the beginning, it was one of 2013. We were still scared of the government a lot. Like Bitcoiners were still on the outcasts. It was not popular. So for those of you who were there, I mean, if you told anyone about Bitcoin, Silk Road was still definitely like it was all about drugs and
you must be a criminal.
You must be a criminal.
A drug dealer. You're a bad person.
And like today we laugh it off, but
no, it was real.
It was
all these business people that are into it now. those are the ones that were calling us and
Yeah.
saying it was, what's it, rat poison or fake money, all these kind of things.
Laundering machines,
Yeah, like
all that
there's
kind of
a
stuff.
reason you didn't get into it back then. Everybody was negative about it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
to be that person that's like, I like it anyway.
Yeah.
It was
yeah,
tough.
Yeah.
And even
No, that
then
was
you
super
doubt
tough.
yourself. I mean, I had, put my savings in or whatever, but
Yeah.
still you're like, I don't know if it goes up or down. I
Yeah.
don't know if the code works tomorrow, it breaks or something.
Yeah. Everybody is taking for granted that Bitcoin works.
Yeah,
and it's
now
not
it's just
but
like,
back in
it's
the day,
fine. Yeah,
back in the day, like we were thinking, like, what happens if it just goes down? It's like
Other things have gone down.
Yeah,
Google went
yeah,
down last week.
yeah.
I mean, Snapchat, Google, YouTube.
yeah.
They're the biggest websites in the world, and they had an outage.
Yeah,
So,
and the only way is like, after all these years, it still hasn't gone down. So like, I'm getting more confident over time. But yeah, so we were doing like journalistic outreach, kind of like what CoinCenter was doing, and then eventually, at like Meetups, and eventually, the number one question people would ask me about Bitcoin was, "Can I buy some from you?" And I was like, in the beginning, I was like, no, like we don't do that. We're educators, we're advocates.
Yeah.
You should go on this exchange. It's like, okay, how about I'll pay you 5% more? Like, no, I just told you, like, okay, how about I pay you 10% more? Okay, maybe. so then people were like, I want Bitcoin, but I don't want to go on the exchange. I just want it now. Oh yeah, I have $100. Can you buy it from me? Okay.
Yeah.
So we installed the Bitcoin ATM. We started to do local Bitcoin trading.
Yeah.
And then eventually, since we had a physical office and we were doing like local Bitcoin trading, we're like, oh, let's make like a physical Bitcoin desk.
Yeah.
And then, so that's what we did. And then instead of going to the ATM, then we had this desk and people would just come and buy Bitcoin. And eventually, I just ended up being like a straight up Bitcoin seller. Like, I would go to the office at like 10 in the morning, from 10 to 6, sit at the desk, and like people queuing, lining up all day. Like that was 2014. I was just selling Bitcoin, like every single user, like, and I guess that's why I got so involved into Bitcoin more politically, like with UASF and stuff. Got onto that because I'm like, if you're talking about the Bitcoin user, like I've seen the Bitcoin user, I've seen his face, I've seen thousands of the faces, and they are not the people you think they are. They're much more diverse than anybody would ever imagine, and it was like so much fun, like to see people's faces, and the pleasure you get when you get someone in Bitcoin. I call it like being someone's Bitcoin father, right? Like you father someone into Bitcoin, and it's such a rewarding thing. So it just organically started like this, and then eventually people started to call, and they say, well, I don't want to come to your office. Can I just send you money online? And I was like, okay. And then that's how I started to build these apps. I was like, all right, so let's start doing a website with a form where people are going to place orders. And like, okay, so then let's add a block explorer, and then let's add this, and let's add that. And eventually we're like, oh, we're building an exchange. Like this is straight up an exchange that we're doing, right? So we, and that's how it evolved. And then I started this company. I bought my friend's company called Bills. So Bills was a payment processing company.
All right.
It was the first.
Did it have a Y in it?
Yeah, exactly. It's BYLLS. So that was like this is like an old business, right? This was launched in 2013, and it was the first business in the world that let people pay their utility bills with Bitcoin. So the guy who founded it had to basically quit. He was moving to another country, and I was like, you can't close bills, dude, because whenever someone asks me, what can you buy with Bitcoin? I was like, aha, did you know you can pay all your bills with Bitcoin?
There you go.
And I was like, that was my perfect line. And everybody was like, what? And I was like, you can't close bills? Like, what am I going to say if you close bills? I'm not going to be able to say that anymore. So he's like, oh, just take it over. I was like, okay, nice. I'll take it over. So I was like, all right, now I own a business. What do I do now? So like, okay.
You're paying people's bills.
Yeah. So I just started, I took over bills. In the beginning, it was only me. There was only one person, just making it run. And then it just grew, and now we're 15 people. And we're expanding. And
so are you both an exchange and paying the bills, or what's going on?
So technically, the word exchange is a weird word because we are an exchange, but an exchange is not what people think. When people think of exchange, they think of trading platforms. So we are more like a currency exchange in the sense that there's no order book It's we buy and we sell, right?
Okay.
Exactly like at you see on the street when you're going for foreign currencies, that red board with like the buy and sell and the two different prices and all the currencies.
Disastrous amount of fees that I pay.
Yeah.
Eating it up, I won't even bother anymore.
Yeah. But you know, it's like the USD euro. It's like 1.5, 1.55, or 1.6, 1.5. So that's how we operate. So we're non-custodial in the sense that. And we let users pay their bills, but if you're paying your bill, you're effectively selling Bitcoin. That's what's happening.
Sure.
Instead of you're selling Bitcoin, and instead of receiving the fiat to your bank account, you're saying, hey, I'm going to sell Bitcoin, but I want the proceeds of the sale to go to Visa or to go to the HSC company.
Yeah.
So our systems start with that. So people sell a lot of, people use bills a lot. Like we don't publish our numbers or stuff like that, but I mean, there's a lot of people that pay their bills with Bitcoin.
Is it Canada only? Or?
Yeah. It's Canada only. Surprisingly, like one of the biggest bills paid is taxes. People pay their taxes with Bitcoin massively, and I'm not kidding. Yeah. They pay taxes with Bitcoin. And then and then eventually I merged bills with another company from Alberta called Bitcoin Brains, and they were exactly like us. They started with a GPU mining shop, physical shop where people would walk in and then the same thing. They started to do the ATMs, and then we realized we're like the same people. We're exactly the same. Our offices look the same, like the same kind of mess, the same kind of electronics all over the place, just the same kind of humor and trolling. It's like, oh, let's merge, let's merge our companies. So we merged the companies, and then now you can also buy Bitcoin on our site. The new site is called Bull Bitcoin. So what's neat is, so the Bitcoins come into our business from people paying bills, and we take their Bitcoins and we sell it to people to onboard. So we try to stay off of the order book system as much as possible, right? To stay like directly from retail user to retail user. So that's what we do now. So basically, it's a really great, fun job because all our clients are kind of hardcore Bitcoin users. Like if you're paying your bills with Bitcoin, you're kind of, I guess you're a top tier Bitcoiner in the sense like you clearly.
You probably have old money.
Yeah.
You're probably not buying Bitcoin just to pay your bills.
No.
You could do that.
You could do that.
It's a medium. You'd pay kind of some extra fees along the way. So it's the kind of thing, if you had the money, you'd be like, oh, the fees are cool because I have the money, but yeah. So
I'll give you a good example. So some legal marijuana businesses, they cannot have access to banking, and they're straight up unbanked, right? And they're paid cash. And some people like to buy Bitcoin and then use Bitcoin with a service like bills because it allows it to kind of get banking services without getting the underlying bank account.
It's kind of an electronic way for them to pay them because otherwise, I mean, they're checks and envelopes.
Yeah, it's super annoying.
Like, at least they can get some Bitcoin, go to the website, and pay the bills for the company.
Exactly. And a lot of people get paid in Bitcoin. So I'm like, I can see. So one of the things that's cool about running a business like this is you can see, you have data, right? You can see the data. And one thing that we definitely know is people that get paid in Bitcoin will tend to spend Bitcoin, and people that buy Bitcoin will sell it for fiat, right? So people that get paid in Bitcoin, they will like pay off their credit card when the price goes up. And if you buy Bitcoin, they will sell and get the fiat in their bank account. So I'm like, if you want, and this is one of the reasons, like if you want merchant adoption, you need income first, right? People, in order to stimulate the spending of Bitcoin, people need to earn Bitcoin first, right? So a lot of people use bills as a way to do that, right? So they're getting their income in Bitcoin, they're kind of off the grid, and then they're cashing out for their expenses and trying to keep the difference, right? So a lot of the users we're seeing is obviously programmers are huge, designers, but even now we're seeing like there's some weird niche, like some niche computer parts store, for example. He's like, well, my supplier is in Europe, and I contacted him, and he's like, I'll give you a 15% discount if you pay in Bitcoin. So and he said, oh well, or do you want to get paid in Bitcoin? And people are using Bitcoin in their supply chain, like they're straight up.
Well, that's what we've always said. The problem, like Overstock would get a bunch of Bitcoin, but then they need to buy more widgets. And the widget company doesn't take Bitcoin. So they have to sell. They have to pay fees. They have to pay the widgets in a money order or whatever.
But
if
it's
we could
totally
convince that chain,
yeah.
so yeah, if you can get it up and down the chain, that's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
gonna change
and
it,
it's
so.
it's a slow process because you need a lot of different people. The free market is great because you get tons of different people who never met each other, who are spontaneously somehow collaborating into the creation and delivery of a product.
Yeah.
But in order for everyone in that chain to switch to a new currency like Bitcoin, I mean, it's not something that's spontaneous. Like,
No.
people need to learn about it.
Well, we're used to spontaneous though.
Yeah,
Now. We want
yeah.
everything to happen now.
Yeah,
We don't have any
yeah,
patience.
yeah.
I want it now. Streaming service, like I won't go get a movie off the shelf. I'll
Yeah.
just stream it. So
And the whole chain needs to be there because if someone in the chain is gonna not use Bitcoin, then you have this friction. You have to sell for fiat. So it's like that. But that moment the chain is complete, boom, everybody's at Bitcoin. It's like, and now the payments are being processed super fast, and everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And like that moment where it happens is like, damn, like you really see the power of Bitcoin when you completely remove fiat from the equation. It's unbelievable how Bitcoin is amazing. Like the Bitcoin user experience so far is still subpar. Because there's always the fiat to get out of, right? There's always, and that causes all sorts of problems.
That's when you have to pay the taxes and the fees.
That's
when you get on the KYC and they know you. And
every issue with Bitcoin is related to fiat. Like KYC is fiat, taxes is fiat, accounting is all related to fiat. Slowly, before someone was saying downstairs, like nobody prices their stuff in Bitcoin. Like, I beg to differ. I have a T-shirt store and I price it in Bitcoin. Some people are starting to think in Bitcoin. Like when I think, I am totally thinking in Bitcoin unit of account. I'm straight up, I've completely gone off the rails in that sense. I have my amount of Bitcoin in my head, and that's the one I'm keeping. And when I'm spending, my budget is in Bitcoin, right? So I'm like, okay, so this year, I only want to spend this amount of Bitcoin, but I definitely want to make this amount of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I am totally not thinking in fiat. And and this is a mental switch, which is irreversible, right? So it doesn't matter how long and fast adoption takes because it is a one-way switch, right? It's kind of like the red pill. Morpheus isn't like going to everyone, putting the pill in everyone's mouth. He's going after certain people one at a time and stuff like that. But once you've taken the red pill, it's not going back. So the adoption of Bitcoin can only go to 100%. It can only go one way because even if it's one person a year, on a long enough timeline, like everybody's going to be doing it, right? So I'm totally red pilled. I'm just a psycho.
So you started off as a philosophy major.
Yes.
Then you learned about computers and programming, and you kind of started an exchange. And you're paying people's bills. What do you say to the people at home? What can they do in Bitcoin if they want to have a job in Bitcoin?
Oh, totally. Meetups are amazing. Okay, so go to the meetups in person. That's where everything happens. Start to organize a meetup yourself. It's not that hard. I would say like local Bitcoins is also, by local Bitcoins I mean peer-to-peer exchange trading, right? So if you want to buy Bitcoin, try going on one of these things and buying them in person to some guy. It's a really weird experience to do, but you learn a lot by doing that. Obviously, spend some time reading, and so it is a good idea for people to get into. But the thing I should say is also, it is okay to just buy Bitcoin and not do anything, right? It's perfectly fine to just. A lot of people they want now they have Bitcoin and they're like, but it's boring to just sit on Bitcoin.
I have to mine.
I have to trade altcoins and I have to do this and this. And it's fun, but the point of Bitcoin is that it should, one day we won't even think about Bitcoin. It's just going to be money, right? It's not going to be special. It's like, oh yeah, money. Like, are people like, are you a fan of money? No, I'm a fan of Bitcoin, but like, are you a fan of money, sir, on the street? It's like, no, like money is the thing that I use to get other things, right? So it's totally fine to just hold and lurk, completely acceptable. Don't feel like you need to do stuff. But if you do, I mean, it's an incredibly fulfilling. I don't know anybody that's ever regretted working in Bitcoin. The only regret that I've seen is people are like, I should have just kept my old job and kept my fiat and bought Bitcoin.
Because I always tell people, don't quit your job.
Yes, do not like.
Especially in the bear and then the
and there's Max over there that quit his job. Like,
quit his job. It's like no, bad plan.
No. But it's good.
Like
to have a job totally. Like one of the things that I regret is having stopped my income of fiat because I'm 100% in Bitcoin, so I can only go down. Like
That's right.
my stats can only go down.
Yeah, yeah.
So obviously, like my income, at Bull Bitcoin, my income is in Bitcoin, right? I don't pay myself, but if I did pay myself, I don't have a bank account, so I don't really have a choice but to pay myself in Bitcoin. So try it out and don't quit your job just yet. But it is. Nobody is bored in Bitcoin. Nobody regrets ever doing it, and it's like an MBA. It's like a master's degree of everything.
Yeah.
Right? Business, economics, philosophy, technology. Like every person that I know in Bitcoin is telling me the same thing. It's like I just learned so much.
Yeah.
Right, and like it's also free. You don't have to pay like $100,000 at some fancy university. Just spend your whole day thinking and talking about Bitcoin. Go to the meetups and conferences. Come out of there like insanely knowledgeable, which is this kind of wealth of knowledge is extremely useful in a world where self-sovereignty is going to be a key differentiator of people. There's going to be people that are. This is why also you should learn how to talk to computers, right? Because you want to be self-sovereign, not trust anyone, and like the skills that we're learning in Bitcoin are like almost like digital survival skills, right? And it's very important and. You can't really rely on anyone than yourself ultimately. So learning those skills and having that toolkit of knowledge when you need it. Like Bitcoin is like a condom. You'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And all the skills surrounding it are critical skills, like how to do a backup, how to recover a backup. So things that you should be learning now. And there's no, you can only learn Bitcoin through practice. You cannot read Bitcoin into your mind. You need to live it and practice it. Yeah.
All right, thanks so much, Francis. And,
all right, it's my pleasure.
Where can people learn more about what you're doing at Bull Bitcoin? The other side.
Yes. So if you're Canadian, bullbitcoin.com. It's only for Canadians, so if you're not Canadian, you can definitely check it out. Everybody wants us to expand everywhere.
It's very complicated. There's so many rules.
There's too many rules.
This line, that line. Everyone build a local one in your country.
I definitely like the idea of my clients being people that can realistically meet me in person, right? So if a client in Korea, like, we don't have as much in common. I like to have my clients people that are like me. So bullbitcoin.com. We also have another store, which is bitcoinoutlet.com. This is an art store where we sell, like this is I got my new Bitcoin Toxic shirt, the Toxic Bitcoiner shirt. We're doing all sorts of stuff like this.
Nice.
I'm pretty active on Twitter, so at Francis Pouliot _ on Twitter. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want to reach out to me, the best way is to try to trigger me on Twitter, and get me to like reply to you, and then send me a DM, and then that's usually a good way to reach out to me.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Thomas.
Thank you so much, Francis.
All right. Thanks. Bye.